Hey, Wes. I see you want to talk to us a little bit about resiliency groups in VRP.
I do.
What can you tell us?
Well, quite a bit actually. Resiliency groups are the main unit of operation in a VRP environment. So once you have your assets added to VRP, and we've gone through our infrastructure management servers, added the assets, in the sense of VMware, we're connecting to a vCenter server to discover these. In the case of Hyper-V, we're connecting to the Hyper-V servers to discover the Hyper-V VMs and their associated replication. And for applications, we're either connecting to a system where the application is running, or we're connecting via VOM to a VCS or Veritas cluster server, a global cluster environment, to discover the applications running in global service groups. Once we have that in place, and we have replication going between our sites, so here I have my New York data center, and I have my Paris data center, then the next step would be to build resiliency groups. So the resiliency groups that we can create are either based on virtual machines or based on applications. And the resiliency group can contain one or more assets of the same type. So if it's an application, I can put all of them into a resiliency group, or I can put a minimum of one in a resiliency group, or anything in between. If I'm dealing with virtual machines, I can put VMware VMs as assets into a resiliency group, or I can put Hyper-V VMs as assets in a resiliency group. I cannot mix these. Okay? So one thing to understand about resiliency groups is all assets in a resiliency group start together and stop together. Okay? So if you have a case where you have to have ordered startup, then you'd put each level into a resiliency group and then start them up in order with our virtual business services. Okay. Now, those are the groupings of a resiliency group, but we also have the concept of a protected versus an unprotected resiliency group. So when you start the resiliency group process of creating one, you choose your assets, add it to the resiliency group, and initially it's going to be created as an unprotected resiliency group, meaning we have not yet discovered through our replication in our VMware environment or our Hyper-V environment, or manually if we're doing applications, because we have to identify the like application at both sites, we haven't yet discovered the like components at the other side. So what we get in that configuration is an unprotected resiliency group that gives us the ability to do what we call local workload management. We can start them up and shut them down at the local site only. Once we initiate the process to go to a protected resiliency group, we are discovering the replication. We're discovering the like components at the other side, and we get it presented to us so we can verify. If we're doing it at the application level, we must choose the application at the other site and add them both into the same resiliency group. Once that association has been created, then we can do migrations, we can do takeovers, we can do rehearsals, and we can still also do local workload management. Okay? We cannot do any of these unless we're in a protected resiliency group and we have that end-to-end view via the replication. And that's pretty much what a resiliency group is. The unit of startup and shutdown, unit of migration, the unit of takeovers, the unit of rehearsals.
Okay. So really the power, maybe perhaps the best way to describe it is the power of resiliency groups comes when they're protected?
Correct.
That would be the best way to look at it?
That's, well, VRP is, of course, a orchestration tool for disaster recovery. And of course, disaster recovery requires at least 2 data centers and the ability to move your data from one site to the other, and you would need a protected resiliency group for that.
Okay, great. Well, Wes, thank you for taking us through the resiliency group concept.